you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to Three Gun Show episode 36. I'm your host, Dave Hartman. And this week I have a great interview with Three Gun Nation Pro, Aaron Hayes of Team Benelli and Hayes Custom Guns. Before we get into the interview, I want to thank you for downloading and listening to the show. The Three Gun Show is a weekly podcast dedicated to the fastest growing shooting sport. Each week I bring you a new episode featuring an awesome three-gun athlete, a manufacturer of multi-gun specific products, or in today's case, both. Now, in this episode, Aaron Hayes tells us how he started building custom pistols years ago. We talk about an honest self-assessment and how it's important to improve your three-gun game. We also talk about the 2015 IPSC Shotgun World Shoot and what Aaron learned from that, and he's going to incorporate into his practice this year. Links to everything we've talked about can be found in the show notes. So if you're driving to or from a match, check out threegunshow.com/episode 36 when you get a minute. And now please join me in welcoming the show, Aaron Hayes. Aaron, thank you for joining me on the Three Gun Show.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron, I'm excited to have you on. We've been trading back and forth a couple emails here and trying to figure out a time to connect, but you are a busy man. You're at in the last couple of weeks, you've been at the Virginia FNH Three Gun Championship, in Italy for the Shotgun World Shoot, in Tulsa for Ben's three-gun pro match.
Yep.
And this last weekend in Jacksboro, Texas for the Fallen Brethren three-gun match. Got to see you guys on the live stream, and you're out there supporting your brother. And I guess my first question is, what's on everyone's mind is, what's it like to be Ben's brother?
Intimidating. That's the little brothers, man. You really got to watch out for him. He is a really, really talented natural shooter. He's been shooting competitively since a pretty young age. Him and a couple of my cousins who are a little younger than him shot an event when they were just really young called the Sportsman Team Challenge, which is a 3-person event with shotguns and then 22 rifles and pistols. And they actually won a national championship. I can't remember the year, but it was probably about 10 years ago that they won a national championship. So he's, three-gun, he's kind of new to three-gun the last couple of years, but competitive shooting he's not new to, and he's really transitioned really well. So it's just such a natural, he just looks so natural. I mean, I'm out there trying my hardest, and he just kind of strolls up. Oh, did you bring my guns? Yeah, I brought my guns. Brought your guns. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to go win the match. So it's fun.
Yeah, and we got to watch him in that eliminator with like the smoking 328 run on the Death Star with the shotgun. So, that's been the buzz lately. So I just had to give you a hard time there.
Yep. Thankfully, I wasn't in his match. I would have. Now, he didn't shoot the stages too well. So he saved it all for that eliminator, but I'm glad I didn't have to shoot against him. So
that's awesome.
It was fun.
So, Aaron, I want to give out a couple places people can find you if they're listening along and want to check it out here. Facebook.com/Hayes Custom Guns, Instagram.com/Hayes Custom Guns, and that's HAYES.
That's it.
And you've also got an Instagram with some really good stuff on your, for yourself, and that's Aaron_Hayes_3gun. And, if you're driving, I'll have all those links in the show notes, and you can check it out there. So, Aaron, great to talk to you, man.
Great to be here.
I'm really looking forward to doing like a deep dive here. It's cool to see all of your guns in the pro match and all over social media and things like that. And it seems like the gun I personally heard about this year, and now they're like everywhere.
Yeah, we were really happy to see all of our guns in that last match that Ben was in. 4 of the 6 shooters in that match shoot for us. Jacob Betzworth, my teammate with Benelli, of course my brother Ben, and then Dylan Easley and Ty Starling. So it was pretty fun to see all of our guns in action and see them doing well. It was pretty exciting. And then the live stream format, I really think is cool that they're doing that, because it just makes it so much more personal. For character development, the guys on the show, you kind of see the background story and see a lot of the back and forth. And so it was a really fun experience. We were really happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, I really like that live stream as well. That's one of the reasons I do this show, is because you don't get like that deep dive, when you're watching it on like the Sportsman's channel. But in this format, we get to talk for an hour and everybody gets to learn everything about you. But it was kind of cool seeing, guys I've talked to on the radio, on the podcast here, and guys that I've only seen, words coming out on Facebook and stuff like that, interacting and the joking that goes along with it. And you're right, it does create that backstory of the match. It was a lot of fun.
Yep, and I know they definitely try to do that, with the interviews and stuff on the episodes that are on the Sportsman channel, but there's just not enough time to really get into it. So it's good that people get to see both sides. They get to see the much more polished, version of the match, and then for the people who really want to see what's really happening in the behind the scenes stuff, that's the live stream is available there too. And it's nice, at USSA that they have actually pretty strong cell phone signal. I was talking with a couple of the guys that were running the match about that, and I guess they just got a new tower out there, so they were running all that stuff off of cell signal. They didn't have any Wi-Fi out there or anything, so it's nice to have a range where you can do that, kind of in real time, because we were out at Fallen Brethren. That's pretty much a dead zone, so it was kind of frustrating to stay in touch and check scores and communicate. It's fantastic range, but it's really out there. So
yeah, that's most of the ranges in Colorado too. And when we do the scores on Practice Score, once one guy is able to get that thing, we just kind of crowd around him because it's not worth everyone trying.
Hotspot, man, turn on your hotspot, and we all blow up his data. So
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. So Aaron, you mentioned there's a lot going on behind the scenes in these pro matches that we don't get to see on television because it's only 30 minutes. What was going on in your pro match? Give us some behind the scenes kind of glimpse.
In my pro match, it was definitely a little more laid back. We didn't know each other as well amongst the various shooters. I mean, we know Dylan really well, and of course Jacob. And then Ty. So there was a lot more kind of joking around, I think, in that match than mine. It was myself, Jesse Tischhauser, Mike Cassidy, and John McClain. Tommy Smith. I'm trying to think of the other shooter. The name's escaping me. But a couple of guys I'd never met before. And Nick Miller from Houston, Texas, down distant arms shooter. So I knew Nick pretty well, but the other guys I'd met a few times or not at all. So it was definitely a lot. So the last shooter was Nick Miller of Dissident Arms down in Houston, and I know him pretty well. But the rest of the guys I had only met a few times or not at all. So it did loosen up as the night wore on, especially with John McClain. He loosens everything up wherever he is. So it was really fun shooting with him, and it was a good match. He actually had some gun problems, and it was kind of cool to see basically everyone super, super invested in trying to get his gun up and running again. There was, in sports, sometimes you think, oh, these guys look like they're friends, but are they really friends? Does anybody really get along? And it was really good to see, me and Jesse and John and a couple of the other guys, we were all basically scrounging for spare parts and helping him test fire it and try to figure out what we can do to get his rifle up and going. So that was kind of good. Even though we all want to win, we all want everyone else to do well as well. So it's kind of one of the things that sets shooting apart, I think.
Absolutely. There definitely is like a camaraderie, and it's probably because we're always, rallying around each other in the political arena and things like that. But that's kind of one of the, like you were talking about live stream, it's kind of one of the big drawbacks is when we talked to John McClain on the show, he did mention how you guys were trying to help him out with spare parts and stuff like that, and he ended up using Jesse's rifle. But that wasn't mentioned once on the Sportsman's channel. And, unfortunately, they have that tight format when it's only 30 minutes, so they can't really expand on those side topics as much as they probably need to.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, they would like to.
And, I've had this discussion with a few friends about, what do we want to see as shooters who are heavily invested in the sport financially in our time versus their target, market, which is people who don't shoot that much at all. And the fact of the matter is people who don't shoot that much at all just want to see shooting. So, we as shooters have to remember that we are such a small, small part of the television market or whatever market. We talk about ARs sometimes sitting around when we're driving and, we should build this kind of rifle or we should build that kind of rifle. Competitors would love it. Well, if you look at what competitors, especially serious competitors, are such a small, small fraction of the overall gun market, we're not even a drop in the bucket when it comes to shooting. I mean, Benelli, one of the things we're doing with Team Benelli is trying to expand their reach into the competitive shooting arena. I know a lot of people shoot Benellis, but competitive shooters are only 8% of the Benelli market. So all the rest is hunting and just general shooting. So that kind of gives you an idea of the perspective. When we are at matches and we see everybody with all this stuff, we think, oh man, we're responsible for buying so much stuff. Well, that's unfortunately not the case. There's so many more people buying just a plink and that don't have any idea that what we do even exists. Sometimes we have to make ourselves focus on that, and not make a TV show for ourselves, but make it for people who don't know what we're doing. So it's sometimes those aren't the same. What I would like to see is not necessarily what somebody who's never been to a shooting match wants to see. So
yeah, that is an excellent point. And when they focus on that target market that may not necessarily, like you said, even know about 3-gun or the stuff that we do, it does end up bringing people into the fold as well.
I think it does, yeah, because I've invited a few friends. I had a couple of friends come watch me at the pro qualifier match up in Tulsa, and they had no idea that what we were doing even existed, and they had a blast watching it. So it is something that is fun to watch in person, particularly the 3-gun nation style matches where all the targets are close and you can see everybody's different versions of the plan and things like that. Out at Fallen Brother, we had a lot of long range shooting, and a couple of stages where you would shoot other guns and then run down range, and flop down prone at the end of the stage. Well, for spectating, you can't even see the shooter, let alone the targets. So as far as, the product, the stages are certainly exciting to watch, and, the Death Star and all the eliminators, it's really a hoot to watch. So translating that, to people who don't shoot, being able to enjoy it is really important. So
yeah, one of the more humbling experiences is, showing someone like a video of one of your great runs that includes long range, and then they're like, why is it taking you so long to hit those targets?
Right. Yeah, long range, it's kind of like golf. Long range looks easy until you try it.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
Think, okay, now I get why so many people are so into this, because it is really, when I first started shooting, our local club out here at Best of the West Shooting Range was one of the only club matches that I've ever known about that we could shoot out to about 500 yards. I think 485 yards was usually the long target at that match. And you don't run into that very often, especially out there. They typically have like 15-mile-an-hour crosswinds, so it's a very difficult stage. And it kicked my butt when I first started shooting. I would go out there, and I would, I'm getting better. And man, that long range was just my nemesis. And I finally just made up to myself that I was going to learn to shoot it. I bought a chronograph and invested the time in learning what my bullets are actually doing that far away. And it was nice to have a match where I could go and practice that on a monthly basis, because, especially in the Northeast, a lot of these people out in California, I talk to people who they can only shoot 100 yards. Well, it's really, really hard to practice 500-yard shots in a 20-mile-an-hour wind when you've only got 100-yard range. So I'm blessed to be able to live near a place like that, but that really transformed my game and kind of took it to the next level when I was no longer intimidated and really scared to shoot long range, to where I was really looking forward to it. And that became one of the strong suits of my game. This year I've been a little off. I've kind of slacked off on my practice, and it's definitely showing. 'Cause you've got to maintain it, but learning, the mechanics of what's happening with your bullets that far away is really crucial to doing well in a match. Because every match, even if it's only one stage, pretty much everyone agrees that the one long range stage in every match generally determines the winner to a certain extent. Whether it's especially in a 3-gun nation match where it's a total time match. Last year at the regional at Rockcastle, there was one stage, and I think they had about 7 or 8 targets between 300 and 415 yards. It's pouring down rain. The range was super muddy. The weather conditions were really, really awful. And I was not shooting a great match, and I was able to go in on that stage and shot I think I was 3rd place on that stage, and made up 30 or 40 seconds on a lot of the guys that were just ahead of me, and wound up finishing 7th at the match, which was my highest finish at the time. And that was, just because I'd been practicing, and I was super, super excited to finally see a reward for all that time put in. So if you're going to be competitive in 3-gun at the highest level, long range is a necessity.
So when was it then? Like, how long ago did you set out to make that breakthrough in your rifle game to improve?
Well, so I started shooting, I guess it was the summer of 2011 when I started shooting 3-gun. I'd grown up around guns and was familiar with shooting in general, but 3-gun, summer of 2011. And so all through that winter, we shoot all through the winter here in Texas. We're lucky enough to have good weather for that. And so it was probably the summer of 2012 when I started to get better and started to realize, I could do pretty well here. Actually, one of my teammates, Lance Dingler, lived in Austin at the time and shot at that match and won it pretty much every month. It was either him or a man named Trip McInvale, who he shoots not as much as he used to, but he's also a really good long-range shooter and with a military background. And one of those two guys won the match every time. And I thought, man, if I ever am going to win the match, I'm going to have to learn to do this, because those guys would lay down there and go 1 for 1 literally as fast as I could shoot a pistol at close targets, it seemed like. So I just started reading. The internet is a wonderful thing when you're looking for information. Started learning a little bit about ballistics, learned a little bit about reloading. I decided that if I was going to ever shoot really good long range, I was going to have to start loading my own ammo. So I invested in that and bought a chronograph, like I said, and just started practicing. I would, get my load data and go out to the range and shoot at various distances and see if what I was expecting to happen actually happened. Worked a lot on my trigger control. That's where I've really let slip this year is my trigger control. I'm trying too hard to see my impact of in my scope and basically pushing the rifle. And I didn't realize it. Had a couple of bad matches earlier this year, and I actually went over to Louisiana where my dad lives, and him and some of his friends shoot 22 bench rest. Which, if you've ever shot 22 bench rest, it is challenging. 50 yards is how far the targets are away. The bullseye is about the diameter of the 22 bullet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these guys, I was just going to shoot my dad's guns. I didn't even have a 22 rifle at the time, capable of doing that kind of shooting. And they're all setting up all their equipment and everything, and they were putting out wind flags every 10 yards from the shooting line to the 50-yard line.
No
and
kidding.
I'm thinking, come on, guys, this is only 50 yards, right? So we got a little practice session. I think we got a 30-minute practice session before the match. And I was shooting so poorly, I could not even believe it. On a rifle with a bolt action 22 with a really light trigger, and I could not hit the center, and I just couldn't figure it out. So I just started experimenting with my technique and the way I was holding the rifle, and what I determined was I was pushing the rifle. I was essentially flinching, and it was enough through that rifle I was shooting had a fixed 30 power scope on it, and I could actually see what was happening when I was pulling the trigger. So that kind of helped me identify what I was doing wrong, and I went home and applied that to my long-range practice and actually made some improvements. And at Fallen Brethren last weekend, the first long-range stage, I really bombed. I mean, I just tanked it. And the targets, fantastic match this year with big targets that were well-painted. Target visibility has sometimes been an issue with that match in the past, but this year it was fantastic. And I couldn't hit any of them on the first stage. And I thought, what in the world is going on? So we didn't get to shoot another long-range target until the last day. And I made up my mind I was just going to work on my trigger control and not even pay attention to where the bullet was going. Not try to see my impact, try to make corrections, just fire one good shot. And I went 1 for 1 pretty fast. So, and then on the next stage, which was kind of their signature stage, is stage 9 off this big boulder that we shoot off of down over this valley with targets just all scattered across through the woods. And I shot it really well up until the last target. I got to the last target, and I was thinking about the wind. I was thinking I was almost done, and I started looking for my impacts. And sure enough, it took me 6 or 7 shots to hit that target. So there is some technique to it more than just laying there, and seeing the target. And it took me a little while to learn that, this whole year to learn that. So even when I thought I learned it the first time, once I tried to take it to the next level, I've got a 6-power scope now. I learned on a 4-power scope. When I got my 6-power scope, I thought, oh, this will be great. I can see my impacts and, call misses myself and be so much faster. And that actually kind of led to a little bit of a regression. So it's a constant learning process.
Well, that's good stuff. I like the idea of, the cross training with, the rimfire matches and everything, and bringing that back to your 3-gun game. That's really cool. So when you talk about like focusing on your trigger control, is there like something that you recite to yourself before you shoot or while you're shooting, or some sort of mode that you get yourself in to do the mechanics correctly?
Well, I just kind of focus on, and actually I kind of learned by watching other people with my trigger technique. I tend to get real slappy on the trigger when I'm trying to go fast. And I tend to get slappy on the trigger even when I'm not trying to go fast. So a guy that I shoot with here, his name is Brian Quick. He's a police officer in Round Rock, and he's mainly a pistol shooter. He does a little bit of 3-gun, but I go out and shoot with him every now and then. And one day we just built him a new rifle. He was out testing it. He was shooting an aim point, 50 yards prone, and he shot a group that I just could not believe. I mean, it was fantastic. Granted, it's only 50 yards, but with an aim point, your dot is way bigger than the bullseye you're aiming at. And I just couldn't believe how good that group was. The first 3 shots out of this rifle. And what he was doing was he would fire the shot, and he would hold the trigger back until he was ready to make the next shot. And that just really made an impact with me because it was so opposite of what I had been doing. So generally, when I start to get sloppy on the trigger, I just kind of try to focus on doing that. Make the shot, and then the release of the trigger, separate actions. And That way you're only focusing on your trigger pull. You're not focusing on the next shot. That really focuses you to only look at what you're doing right that second. And that generally tends to help. You know, if I'm shooting pistol and trying to go too fast and missing, I'll just think, okay, break the shot, release, break the shot, release. And breaking it down into that two-step process tends to calm me down. A lot of people have a lot of different ways that, that work best for them. But for me, that made a big impact, and focusing on that really seems to help me out the best when I'm struggling.
Do you think that maybe, trying to do like quick double taps on all the paper targets kind of programs in your head that trigger slap, and then
it definitely does. It definitely does. The top guys, you watch a video of Jerry Michlik or Daniel Horner or Greg Jordan shooting double taps. I mean, their finger never leaves the trigger. They're going through that process that quickly. It's literally as quickly as possible. And most of us, when we're doing double taps on paper, are not thinking about anything but getting the dot on the paper. We're not working on our trigger control. We're not working on any of the other things. So yeah, slapping, is the fastest way for most people to shoot. And, you can definitely develop bad habits. That's probably the one downside to 3-gun as it is today, is it's so focused on speed that your fundamentals suffer. And when you go to do any other discipline, it generally rears its ugly head. We shot the Sportsman Team Challenge, the match I was referring to earlier this year. It was in Austin. And on the rifle stage, you've got all 3 guys shooting rifles at the same time. It's a part-time event. And there are steel targets out to 90 yards. And the smallest targets on the plate rack at 90 yards are a star and a diamond that are about 1.5 inches. And whenever you go try to shoot something like that, fresh off a 3-gun match, it's really, really hard to make yourself slow down and focus on that shot. So you can definitely form some bad habits trying to go too fast, but it's still more fun to go fast.
Of course it is. That's why we're all
here.
That's
right.
Well, Aaron, want to switch gears a little bit here. We mentioned Hayes Custom Guns at the top of the show, but in talking with Diana a little bit, it sounds like there's like a little bit of a backstory here that maybe people don't quite know the whole deal, and it's super interesting. So
there is, yeah.
If you don't mind, tell us how Hayes Custom Guns started, and then take a little step backwards and tell us how you got started in the pistol business.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start at the beginning. So my grandfather, his name was Jim Clark. He was a sniper in World War II. He came back from the Pacific Theater, and competitive shooting was just kind of getting going. You got all these guys coming back from the war, and they've all got 1911s. And this was, everybody had free time, everybody had discretionary income compared to what it had been, during the war and prior. And everybody had this gun, so they all just started shooting those. And turns out he was pretty good at it. He started with 22s and then started working on 1911s. And since that was the gun everybody had, that's the one they focused on improving. What are the cheapest and most cost-effective things we can do to this gun to make it better? And that's how Clark Custom Guns was born. His name of his shop was Clark Custom Guns. He started that in the early 50s. And it's over in North Louisiana, Shreveport. Now it's in Princeton, which is on the outskirts of Shreveport. And so my Uncle Jim Clark Jr. runs the shop now. And when I was in college, I worked there. I was there for about 6 years as a machinist and gunsmith. And then my younger brother, Ben, he was there for about 10 years and was kind of their lead 1911 guy. And so I quit working there in 2001, moved to Austin. I was in the insurance business for a while. And, didn't really do anything with shooting. And my brother got married and had a couple kids and was looking to move to Austin. His wife was looking at taking a job here in the Austin area. So he called me up one day and said, "Hey, Aaron, I don't really want to do anything else but guns. So let's talk about maybe doing a gun shop." So we started talking, and I had just started shooting 3-gun, just kind of with one of my other buddies here, just kind of something to do. And the more we talked, the better idea it became. So we started our shop we got our FFL in June of 2012. So right at 3 years. And we intended to build single stacks. Clark's is mainly a single stack shop. They build a lot of custom combat stuff, IDPA stuff, concealed carry stuff is really what they're known for, in addition to many other things. So that was kind of what we intended to focus on. And started shooting 3-gun, and Austin is a real hotbed of 3-gun right now, and a lot of USPSA shooters here, and a lot of competitive shooting in general. And we built a couple of 2011s, started shooting them, and turns out that's what we've been doing ever since. So we probably build 15 2011s for every single stack that we build now. So we've kind of developed that specialty of being a 2011 shop and 3-gun specifically. I'd say 9 out of the 10 guns we build are 9mm. And it's fun. It's really fun. I really like being able to go and shoot with our customers. It's nice to be able to get FaceTime with the people who are shooting our guns. People have questions. People have problems. We can address it. A lot of times on site, I can't tell you how many times we've done something for somebody in the middle of a match. Somebody will come over and say, hey, can you come look at this? Can you check that out? So it's really nice for us to be able to be there and handle that right then instead of somebody having a problem and, oh, well, the match is over. I've got to borrow a gun and call these guys on Monday and hope they pick up the phone. So it's been really fun. Yeah. And they kind of go hand in hand. So
it's cool to be able to get that, face to face, like you said, and, probably, having the fact that your customers are also standing next to you on the line, makes for a better product because you can get that feedback right away from them.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's kind of what our focus when we started building these guns was, what do people want? We kind of had in our mind what we thought would be a good gun to build, but the first few guns we built were pretty much entirely customer designed when it comes to the machine work and the parts list and everything. So we try to be able to do exactly what the customers want. Depending on what parts people want to use, sometimes it can take a little while. With the situation of the gun industry as a whole in 2012 was pretty rough in terms of being able to get stuff. So we've had to work around a few issues, but yeah, we try to be as responsive to the customers as possible and to try to give everybody exactly what it is they want. Because when you're spending the kind of money that it costs to build a custom competition pistol, you want to get exactly what you want. Nobody wants to spend $4,000 on a pistol and it not be what they imagined. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, just to drive home that point, 2012 that was definitely a hard time to find a lot of components. So, interesting that that you started then and had to go through those early years of the struggle there.
Yeah, it's funny. That was 2012 was the first year I started shooting big matches, and I did okay in a couple of, I think it was the Fallen Brethren match of 2012. I actually got a Bushmaster AR-15 off the prize table, and I sold it Thanksgiving weekend for $700.
Wow.
And then that shooting happened, and they were $2,500. So it was kind of funny. I'll always remember when that happened. And then it just went crazy from there. And rifles were the main focus of that, but the pistols we shoot are high capacity. So that kind of extended a little bit into what we do with magazines. I know you couldn't find STI magazines anywhere. It was really, really hard to find magazines. And, of course, the guys who shoot Glocks had a really hard time getting magazines. And anything related to anything high capacity just went crazy. So it definitely presented a challenge. But luckily we were just in our infancy and, didn't have enough business to really, really put a bad hurting on us. So me and my brother were both in kind of unique positions when we started this business that our spouses had jobs that provided income where we didn't have to go into this and, we've got to pay the bills. If we're not paying all our bills in 3 months, we're done. We kind of were able to ease into it and kind of build it the way we want it. So we were really fortunate and blessed to have that situation because it would have been real, real hard to crank out a lot of guns quickly in that environment.
Yeah, no doubt, especially when you're, trying to make a name for yourself and
hey, buy our guns,
things of that
but
nature.
By the way, we don't have any parts.
Yeah, we're going to sell you some guns, maybe deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be rough, man. So then, so you mentioned that you guys mostly do double stack 2011s. Now, are these all competition guns?
Primarily. I mean, we've sold a few to guys who just want to kind of, plink, but then of course we shame them into it. How are you going to buy a gun like that and not shoot a match? Then they come shoot a local match and then they're hooked. So I would say, 90% of the guns we build are used in 3-gun and or USPSA. So
that's cool. And is it generally like mostly local folks, or are you?
We've got a pretty good local following. I mean, when we started building guns, we shoot a lot of local matches. So just FaceTime with customers, guys being able to get their hands on our pistol. After a match, we'd go over in a bay and shoot a little bit. So we have a good, strong local following. We do some other kind of general gunsmithing services, Cerakote, and changing out sights and triggers and Glocks and things like that. So we try to be able to do all that stuff to keep our local guys taken care of. But we've got customers all across the country. People who found us on the internet, people who've talked to somebody who has one of our guns or saw one of our guns at a match. So it's starting to expand pretty good, and we're pretty happy with the direction it's going.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I've seen a couple of your Instagram photos, and it looks like you guys do some other stuff. And I see modifying shotguns every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys generally stick to pistols, or do you branch out into shotguns and rifles?
Well, when I started shooting, since we build guns, I wanted to be the ability to be able to work on everything else I needed. So I didn't know that, working at Clark's, if we had a disadvantage when we started our business, it's that 1911s were really all we knew. I did not have an extensive background in anything else, very little actually. So, I learned an AR-15. I learned a shotgun. ARs are pretty easy to deal with most of the time. But shotguns were kind of a different animal, and that was when traditional old school weekend loading was still what everyone was doing, and the Mossberg 930 had just come out, so I got a Mossberg and started practicing weekend loading, and it went okay. I got decent at it, but I finally worked up the nerve to start cutting on the loading port, start cutting on the handguard, and it was pretty ugly, but I made it work, and so I just kind of started focusing more on the shotgun stuff, because that part of the three gun really appealed to me. I like shooting shotguns. It's just you can run and shoot fast, and it's just a very dynamic activity. So it really appealed to me. So I started focusing more on the shotguns and learning more about them and figuring out what the best setup for competition was. Really paid a lot of attention to what people were using, and of course it was the Benelli M2. Is pretty much what everybody was using. I saw a thread on a forum online a couple years ago about what the top 50 pros were using, and every one of them that wasn't sponsored by another company was using a Benelli. So I bought a Benelli and just took it apart and started learning how it worked, and slowly figuring out what needed to be done, to the loading port, what sights I liked and things like that. And really, really enjoyed shooting that gun. So I was kind of self-taught when it comes to the other stuff. Luckily, they're much more simple than 1911s tend to be. So I picked it up pretty quickly. And, of course, now I'm shooting for Team Benelli. Business with shotguns has picked up quite a bit. So we do build competition shotguns, primarily Benellis, but I can work on other stuff too. But the Benelli M2 is pretty much the king when it comes to simplicity and reliability and effectiveness.
And it's pretty cool that you get to, now shoot for Team Benelli when you have been shooting Benellis for years. And it's cool to see that rather than just, they tossed me a Benelli and so I dropped my Mossberg. But, when you set up your initial Benelli for yourself, what did that setup look like?
Well, it was a 26-inch barrel, because that's what I found at a local store. I put I believe it had an X-Rail 10-round tube on it. They're mono tube. I saw one of those. I saw Mark at a match and saw his tube, and that really intrigued me. I'd read a lot of stuff about you have to have a clamp on the barrel, and otherwise your tube will break. But then the clamp throws off your sights, so that monotube design really appealed to me. So I put one of those on there, and I'm a lefty, so I had to tweak the stock. Luckily, the Benelli, I think most semi-automatic shotguns come with, shims to adjust the various dimensions of the stock to fit you. So I've spent quite a bit of time setting up the stock, and that was pretty much it. Opened up the loading port. We have a milling machine in our shop, so I'm able to do it on a machine. So it looks a lot cleaner. Guys do it by hand. It's not necessarily any more effective, but it does look a little better. So I just started experimenting with that loading port a little at a time until I got to where I felt like it was good for loading. And of course, we were still weekend loading at that time, so it looked quite a bit different than they do now because it's a pretty different setup you need for that kind of loading. But yeah, it was pretty basic. I didn't have the stock stippled or rear sights or a lot of the stuff people are doing now. Match savers weren't around then that I knew of anyway. So it was a fairly bone stock setup other than the port and the magazine tube. And actually, one of my friends still shoots that gun today. I sold it to him. And I did shoot a few other guns. I shot a Versamax for a while. I shot the Mossberg for a while, mainly just because I wanted to learn how to work on them. If somebody would come up and ask me about a gun, oh, well, I guess I better learn it. So the Browning is starting to catch on. So I've got a couple of buddies that have Brownings that I've been going over pretty good to kind of figure out the little intricacies of each gun. They all work pretty much the same, but each one has its own little details that are different that you need to know about, especially when we're cutting the ports as aggressively as we do now. You've really got to be aware of where everything is inside that receiver because it's not that hard to turn one into a paperweight.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to put metal back on.
It is very hard. And, somebody will call us up. I got a message a while back from somebody who said, hey, I opened up my receiver too far. Is that something we can just kind of weld up and then grind it down? And no, No, it is not. So I'm sure somebody out there is capable of doing it, but I'm not, and I do not even want to try.
Yeah, I mean, for a repair like that, it sounds like you would sink more into labor to repair it than you would, for
Yep.
purchasing a new
Yep,
shotgun.
yep. And actually, Mark Roth up at X-Rail makes a magazine tube. It's one of his monotubes that the magazine tube itself retains the follower. So if somebody does have a shotgun that they opened up too far where the follower or shells won't stay in, it may not work on every single one, but I've heard of people having good results using that. So it's certainly cheaper
cool.
than a new shotgun.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So then you've got a new shotgun this year. What has changed, and how does your shotgun setup look like now?
Well, so this is my first year with Team Benelli, and another one of our partners is Terran Tactical Innovations. So Benelli supplied the guns, and then Terran supplied the work to basically get them competition ready. So the guns I'm shooting now, I've got a 21-inch M2 and a 26-inch M2. The 21 has a 12-round tube on it, no barrel clamp. The 26-inch gun has a 14-round tube with a barrel clamp. The stocks are stippled. They've got Terran's full upgrade package, so the stippling on the stock, oversized bolt handle, oversized bolt release button. The port's been opened up extensively. It's got the high-vis tri-comp front sight on it, which I really like. And a match saver, let me think. It came with a sling mount. I'm trying to think of what else. Loading port, the shell latch being tuned. A lot of those guns, a lot of people will open up the loading port and think that's going to make it easier to load, which it does, but the shell latch on that gun is actuated by just spring tension of the metal instead of like on the Mossberg or even on like a Benelli Vinci. You've got a multi-part kind of hinged lever system with spring tension on it that generally feels the same all the time, but the Benelli M2 it's just metal, the spring tension of the metal itself, so you've actually got to take that out and polish it, bend it, and tune it pretty extensively to get it to really be loading as fast as possible. I probably take a gun completely apart to get the shell latch out about a dozen times on a new gun before it's ready. So wow. It's kind of tedious, but it certainly pays off when you pick it up and throw some shells in, and it's just, it's just right. So
yeah, it's quite extensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to the rest of the trifecta, what does your personal pistol look like?
Well, you've heard the old joke about how the plumber's toilet always runs.
Yeah. That's why I'm asking.
I had a 6-inch sight tracker that I shot at the beginning of this year. It was a 6-inch Infinity barrel. We'd done quite a bit of lightning on the slide. I used a standard STI grip. It had Cerakote. I'm a lefty, so I had a few parts on there that were specific for that. An oversized mag release that I hit with my index finger, and an extended slide stop. We used Dawson sights, Dawson mag wells on all of our guns. And so yeah, that gun shot great, man. I loved it, and then I sold it
because it was perfect, and you had to get rid of it.
we actually sponsor one of the junior shooters here. Rihanna Caddick is her name. She's shooting a pretty lightweight version of one of our 6-inch guns, and her dad really wanted a gun, and he's a lefty too. So every time he saw mine, he'd say, "Hey, Aaron, that gun." So I finally broke down and sold it to him, and I actually had to. I shot that gun at the pro match, and that was the last match I shot that gun with that gun. And then my friend Stephen Lee lives here in Austin. He shoots with us. He shoots a gun real similar to that. So I've borrowed his gun pretty much for every match since then. I made him set it up with an ambi safety and all the stuff I need so I can shoot it. And I told him, "Look, Steve, I'm gonna have to borrow this gun. Just so you know, that's my gun and that's our gun." And so yeah. But I'm actually in the process of building one now that's gonna be pretty cool. We're gonna me and my brother Ben are gonna build 6-inch guns with the Damascus steel slides. Are you familiar with the Damascus steel?
I'm not.
Well, it's pretty popular with knife makers, and then Caspian makes slides, but it's kind of a multicolor pattern. It's kind of hard to describe until you see it, but it's very cool. Kind of like a zebra pattern. You've got the typical steel color, like the light silver, in its natural state, and then you can etch it with, I believe it's muriatic acid used to etch it, and it basically brings out this second color in it that's much, much darker, and then you can do several things from there. You can polish it, you can ion bond it, and all these different things to make it look different. So we're going to go with Damascus slides, which are pretty cool, and then kind of just make a really, really blingy looking gun. So
Sweet.
Yeah. So, but it'll be
couple
real
of
similar
billboards
to the one I was shooting, 6-inch sight tracker barrel with all the ambi stuff.
Oh man. So yeah, the shoemaker has no shoes. That cracks me
Yeah,
up that
right.
you're running a borrowed
So,
pistol. And that's no small feat too, because like we mentioned at the top of the show, you travel a ton and you shoot a lot of matches. So you've got a very understanding friend there.
yeah, yeah. And then another guy that we shoot with a lot, Garrison England, he shoots one of our pistols and travels to a lot of matches with us. His gun is set up pretty much the same way as well. And it's kind of funny when Ben first started shooting, he had a couple of small kids and just didn't have a whole lot of time other than work and his family. So I would just say, hey Ben, borrow my guns. Just come to the match, shoot my stuff. So it's kind of the running joke that Ben basically shows up with an empty gun belt and whips us all. So at that pro match, he was shooting. That was his own rifle, and then he was shooting Steve's shotgun, and then I had a couple that original M2 that I shot that my buddy Steve now has, and then I had my two Terran tactical guns as backups, and then we had Steve's pistol and Garrison's pistol. So only one out of the three guns he was shooting was actually his. So that's kind of a running joke that if he gets his own stuff, he's really going to be tough.
Well, that's great too. And you told me the story, in the pre-interview, but why don't you tell the audience how much time he had to prepare for that match and how you ended up helping him out?
Yeah, so we'll go back to February at the pro qualifier. He was shooting a really good match, and there was one stage where we had all this zigzagging back and forth the bay a couple of times, shot a bunch of paper with pistol, and then there was three big steel targets, huge steel targets right in front of the pistol dump table, and he ran right by them. And it was just, it was a death blow to his match. He was on track to be fourth or fifth in that match, and that, in a match that tight, the top 20 was separated by like a second and a half in that match, I think, or something. It was ridiculous. So he didn't make the cut. So he was super bummed. We were all really bummed. And so he was on the alternate list, and James Casanova had to drop out of the match, pro match 7. I can't remember the exact date, but he dropped out, I think, because of work-related stuff. And they sent Ben an email on Tuesday and said, you're in the match on Thursday. So he was actually over in Shreveport, where our family lived, where my parents live. And I had just gotten back from Italy from the World Shotgun Shoot. And he called me and said, hey, Aaron, I made the pro match. I said, hey, that's great. And he said, yeah, all my stuff's in Austin. And I said, hey, that's great. I'll put it in the truck. So I loaded all his stuff up and drove to Tulsa, and he met me there. And we shot the match. So it turned out not as well as he would have hoped, but we had a really good time.
Yeah, on the live stream, it looked like you guys had a great time, and this is even better. Like, he didn't even have his gun belt. He had to bring the gun belt for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he showed up with his jersey and the pants he was wearing. I think that's about it.
That's awesome. Well, good for you guys. It's cool to watch that brother dynamic and you guys taking care of each other like that, even though you work together.
Yeah.
You can still stand each other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, growing up, we had our moments. He's 8 years younger than I am. But it was me and him, and then I actually have 6 younger sisters. I'm the oldest of 8. So
wow.
It was pretty much me and him whenever the lines were drawn. So we learned to stick together, and he's always been really good at sports ever since a very young age. We'd be playing football and stuff, and he was always my first pick. So even though he was half the age of all my other friends, and they never could figure out why, but they learned. So he's kind of approached shooting the same way. So it's fun. It's really fun to, shooting is such a family-oriented sport. The Second Amendment in general is just so pro-family, and parents taking their kids to the range, teaching their kids to shoot is really important. So incorporating that family dynamic is really special. So it's nice to be able to shoot with him. And my dad, he comes over and shoots with us whenever he can. He was up at Fallen Brethren with us. So that's the most fun I have at matches generally, was when I've got my friends and family there with me. It's not near as fun by yourself. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's definitely that, the community part of it. And, for me, it's been really cool doing this show, because now it seems like a lot more people know me than I had originally thought. And so that community is expanding, and it definitely makes you look forward to those matches and look forward to getting better and practicing to go out and beat your buddies and have a good time.
Yep. It's definitely the group dynamic. Me and my other buddies that we practice here and then we shoot together. It's fun to see the progression, and we help each other identify weaknesses, and sometimes we coach, sometimes we sabotage. It's a fine line, but it's good.
Of the day,
right? It's good to see the hard work pay off. So actually, my friend Garrison just shot up at Fallen Brethren. He was his highest finish, I think, at a major. He shot a really, really strong match. He had a couple little bobbles, but I was really happy to see him put it together. And we've been working a lot on long range and stuff, and he shot a really good long range match. So I was really happy to see him do well. So he beat me by, we did the math on the drive home, 0.3 of a point, which worked out to be under half a second over that whole match.
Oh, holy
It's a 1,000-point
cow.
match, and we were separated by 0.3. So
That is incredible.
So yeah, but a win's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Count it. One of the W column
That's
there.
right.
So you've had the opportunity to travel to a lot of great matches this year, as a member of Team Benelli. And, the one I'm most interested in is the World Shoot in Italy.
Yep, the IPSC World Shotgun Shoot.
Yeah.
They have that match every 3 years. Last time they had it was in 2012, and it was in Hungary. And that was when Lena Michalik was really started taking shooting seriously. She's actually my cousin. And so her and I started shooting kind of at the same time. My Texas Multigun in 2012 was my first major match, and that was her second major match. So we kind of started shooting at the same time. Obviously, I'd known her. She's a lot younger than me, but knew her growing up because she was my cousin. So we started shooting together and just kind of started sticking together because it was her and I were the new kids. So
awesome.
She went that year and did really well, and I saw her results and just heard her talking about it. It sounded like a really, really fun match. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. That'd be cool to go do one day. And we've done our business and everything, shooting, and then when I got on Team Benelli, we started planning our year, and that was one of the first things that Di mentioned was the World Shotgun Shoot in Italy. And I thought, oh man, this is gonna be cool because it was in Italy. We're shooting Italian shotguns. We shoot for Fiocchi Ammunition, which is an Italian ammunition company. It just seemed, really, really like a good situation. So we started making plans and bought the tickets. And my wife was super excited. All of her extended family is Italian, so she was really excited to go and do some sightseeing and stuff. So we went over there. We were there from September 9th till the 21st and shot the match. The match was 5 days, 30 stages. So it was quite a bit of a grind, a lot of shooting.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it was, I've been practicing a lot of shotgun, but it's a very, very different style of match. Very technical, very footwork intensive. And the way the format works, IPSC has short, medium, and long courses. The short courses are 8 rounds maximum. The medium courses are 16 rounds maximum, and the long courses are 28 rounds maximum. So every day we had 3 short stages, 2 medium stages, and 1 long stage. So in 3-gun, my goal with a shotgun is basically as long as I'm moving, whatever else I'm doing, as long as I'm moving, I'm good. If I'm loading or shooting, whatever I'm doing, as long as I'm moving forward on the course of fire, I'm generally pretty happy with the result. And that approach did not apply well to IPSC style shotgun. On the speed shoots, it's 8 rounds. Some of the stages were empty gun start, but probably only about a third of them. So it's basically a speed shoot, and I'm looking for places to load, places to do this, and I was totally focusing on the wrong things. So the first day really wore me out pretty good. It took me a little while to get a grasp on the IPSC hit factor scoring. I did not quite understand going into it how important speed was on those short runs. So I was shooting slowly, shooting conservatively, trying to avoid no shoots, and the guys I was shooting against were coming in and just blazing these stages and taking a lot more risks because when you're shooting that fast, a penalty is less expensive than extra time. So it took me a while to get that figured out. On the long courses, I did pretty well because I was able to move a little bit and load. But it was a really, really positive experience. We were kind of out in the country in a little town called Anya, which is south of Venice, probably about an hour and a half south of Venice. And just out in the country, there were tractors everywhere, farms everywhere, really nice big range. This range had, I don't even know how many bays and different shooting areas, but it was at least 30 because there was 30 stages, and then they had a huge practice area set up. And it was a really, really positive experience. We got to shoot with the team from Great Britain and the team from the Ukraine, and they were all much better shooters than I am. So it was really fun to be able to watch those guys and kind of pick up on the things that I was missing for that style of match. There's a whole lot of barricades, a whole lot of ports, windows, and just real technical footwork in a short period of time. It's just very different from what the typical 3-gun style of shotgun shooting. So it was really fun, but it was a big challenge.
It sounds from the way you're describing it like a USPSA match, here in the States, but with a shotgun where you've got more ports and they hide targets and obscure them and things like that.
There were definitely some awkward positions. Yeah, I shot right-handed on 2 different stages. And of course they made the right-handers shoot lefty. A lot of no-shoots. They would have no-shoots. A lot of the targets we shot were, I guess, probably about 6-inch square plates. And they would have us no-shoot and a shoot target edge to edge. I mean, literally edge to edge with no space at out to 20 yards. So wow. I shot a full choke on every stage but 2.
Really?
And
interesting.
It was much more like a rifle match than you would think of shotgun, in the 3-gun context. So, and actually, it's a funny story. My guns actually didn't make the trip because of some airline regulations that I wasn't aware of until the day we were supposed to fly. So I actually wound up shooting Diana's backup Terran tactical gun, which luckily, that's one of the benefits of having teammates. Her gun was set up pretty much identical to the way mine are. So I was able to use her gun and have a fairly seamless transition. So, but yeah, very technical, very footwork intensive. And, in 3-gun, I've got a 14-round tube on my main gun. And that's so I can shoot, a few and then load as many as possible, right? We're looking for the space where we can load the maximum amount of rounds to going into the next array. Right. And these guys would shoot 2 or 3 targets, and they would take a half a slide step and load 2 shots, or load 2 rounds, and then shoot a couple more, and then slide step and load 2 more. So just a very, very different approach.
Interesting.
Yeah, in terms of the skill that they were practicing. I practice loading on the move. I'll go out to the range and I'll start running and try to load 12 shells as fast as I can while running. Well, that did not come in handy in Italy. So they really focus on getting the gun on and off their shoulder. And positional shooting, very important. They all had 10-round tubes on their guns, so they've got much less length in and out of ports. What else? They had a lot of targets. Stages had swinging clays behind hardcover, and you would shoot a popper. They would activate the swinging clays. And these guys would shoot the popper, and then basically come up and immediately double tap the spot where the clays were going to come up behind the hardcover, and then just take off. No look back, no hesitation. Just bam, double tap, and they were gone.
Wow.
And, I'm shooting the popper. Oh, there's a clay. Bam. Oh, there's the other clay. Bam. I just lost 3 seconds right there. So watching these guys, their technique on some of these specialty targets was really, really an eye-opener and really impressive. So we shot with Josh Kinney, was the junior shooter from Great Britain, who wound up being the high junior at the match. And he really has some good technique, and it was really fun to be able to shoot with him and watch him shoot because I learned a whole lot.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. When you're talking about like the difference in technique between the two, like, just shooting like a normal shotgun stage here in the States where, you're running and reloading, like it does seem like match directors set up spots where they expect you to load, especially when we were doing the weekend load,
mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. It was much more challenging then because it took so much more time.
Yeah.
My thumb still shows the effects of that learning to load weekend. Before I had an extended lifter in my Mossberg, man, I chewed my thumb up bad a couple times. So, and that's the same thing with any factory lifter. There are some guys who don't change out their lifters, but I don't know how they do it because it's painful. But yeah, I'm going to try and I'm actually helping run the monthly matches down here at Copperhead Creek out in Marble Falls, about an hour from Austin. And we're going to try to do some shotgun matches a few times a year. So I'm going to try to incorporate a little more IPSC style shotgun shooting into our monthly matches out here because it sure made 3-gun seem a lot faster. And I don't know if easier is the right word, but from a technical standpoint, there's no comparison. If the shooters in the United States would shoot true IPSC style shotgun, they would be amazed at how much better shotgun shooters they would become. So I'm going to try to incorporate that into my practice regimen and try to expose people to it, at our monthly matches and stuff, because it was really, really a different challenge. We were talking about the cross training between various disciplines earlier. That's a real good way to self-assess and, go shoot something else that requires a little bit different skill set and see how you stack up. And it's very rewarding because 3-gunners typically do pretty well at other shooting disciplines, but it's also fun when you find a deficiency in your game, and, oh man, here's a place that I didn't even realize that I can improve, but now that I see it, I'm going to start working on that and just take your game to that much higher level. So accurate self-assessment, I've found is one of the most important things in trying to be competitive at a high level, because unless you can be honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are, you're going to be chasing your tail. So try to never stop learning. And this was a big, big learning experience. And I really, really had my eyes opened to some areas where I could improve that I did not realize room for improvement existed. So not because I thought I'm, as good as I can be, but I just didn't realize that aspect was its own entire section of a skill set.
Yeah, it's the old gun guy saying you don't know what you don't know type of thing.
Exactly. So, never ever stop learning. I every time I shoot with somebody, whether they're shooting good or bad, I try to pay attention as much as I can to the way other people do things, because, you'll get to a stage and one of the top guys, everyone's watched, Daniel Horner run a stage a certain way, and then everyone does it that way. And there's nothing wrong with that because he certainly knows what he's doing. But as a lefty, I've really had to learn to try to identify potential spots where I could do something different, because a lot of times what works for right-handers does not work for me. So that's kind of taught me to pay a little more attention to what other people are doing.
So what are a couple of the things that you experienced in the World Shoot that you're going to be bringing to your practice and to the matches you're helping out with there? Give us a couple examples if you can.
Well, I am not a speed shooter. The stages and the matches that I tend to do the best on are the ones where there's more movement, more rifle shooting. So flat-footed speed shooting is just not one of my strengths, and there was a whole lot of this in that match. And when you think of speed shooting, you think of Jerry shooting a plate rack, right, or Daniel running through, mowing down paper on a pro stage. I had never really we're so focused on movement and dynamic shooting with the shotgun. I had never seen people shoot a shotgun like this before. Just flat out speed, just flat-footed, hammer on the trigger at targets that were fairly difficult. I mentioned the swinging clays. These guys were going at the no-shoot targets at closer distances, like they weren't even there, like the no-shoots weren't even there. So it really opened my eyes to what's possible, especially if you know your ammo. A big part of this match was knowing your choke pattern. And these guys that were doing the well at the match knew exactly where every single pellet of that shot was going. And you could tell because they were shooting with such confidence and speed that I would have never imagined somebody could shoot it as fast as they were shooting. So I'm going to definitely be working on tight no-shoots and working on acquiring my target faster. I would come up on a no-shoot target, and I would spend a lot more time aiming than I needed to, just because I was thinking about that no-shoot. And watching these guys come up, their technique for coming into a target is so flawless that that's one of the things I'm going to really focus on. One of the details is whether I'm coming off my shoulder at the start of a stage up to my shoulder or coming up from a reload, bringing the gun back exactly where I want it to be. I think I can really, really improve my game there, because a lot of people, you come up from reload and you put the gun on your shoulder and then you start looking for your target, right? Especially on a stage where you're moving, you don't really have a choice but to do that because you're moving. But stage starts, I just got hammered on the first shots because these guys were coming up and just bam, instant. So that's one of the things I'm really going to work on. And then my short reloads, like load 2 or load 4. We try to focus on load 8s and load 12s because we try to fill our guns as much as we can when we get the chance. But these guys would load 2 shells between, a little half step from one window to another so quick you almost weren't even sure they did it. So I'm going to really be focusing on my load 2, my load 4, to try to speed up. If I have a makeup shot, I can just throw 2 shells in without costing myself any time at all, instead of really focusing on, okay, I know I've got 8 shots and then I need to reload, so I've got to shoot these 8 targets at a certain speed so I don't miss, because then my gun's empty. Well, if I can load 2 as quick as these guys could, I could shoot that target array a lot faster and still be ahead, because I'm either going to hit all the targets at a much faster rate, or even if I have a makeup, I can load 2 so quickly that I could have a makeup, load 2, and still be ahead of where I would have been before shooting conservatively. So if I had to say 2 things, that would definitely be it. Those were the 2 things that really stood out to me as huge factors. And then, of course, the swinging clays. I'm definitely going to build a target like that just because I want to be able to do that, because, man, when I saw them double tap those clays the first time, my jaw hit the ground. It was amazing. It was like a trick shooting demonstration almost. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, crap, now I got to go do that.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, these guys, the guys from the UK, they can't have rifles or pistols. So all they shoot is shotgun. So, like we have down here in Austin, we've got a 3-gun match one weekend, Steel Challenge the next weekend, USPSA, then another 3-gun, and then IDPA. All they do is IPSC shotgun. So every weekend when we're all out doing all of our various things, that's the only thing they're doing. So it definitely showed.
Yeah, for sure. We actually had last year we had a shotgun only match on like a a monthly basis here in Colorado. And as the popularity of three gun has grown, that has morphed into another three gun match.
Nice.
So you can shoot three gun every single weekend here in Colorado, which is fantastic, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, we've got that situation here. I can shoot a three gun match every weekend within about a 2-hour drive. So I'm really fortunate.
Yep. But like you said, the cross training and the specialization, we need to get maybe another tactical shotgun match or
Yep. Well, you guys have
the
the Pikes Peak match, right? How far is that from where you are?
We do. Yeah, so that's about an hour and a half from where I'm at, and I did shoot that one again this year, and that was that match used to be a series last year.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so my buddy Mike Payne ran that, and Mike, you should do it again.
That's right.
Loved it.
More shotgun matches, the better. That's what I tell a lot of new shooters.
Absolutely.
People come into three gun and want to know what they can do to improve because you go shoot a match, right? And you see these guys. I remember when I was there, and man, how in the heck did he do that so fast? It's not possible. The two things that I found improved my game the quickest was long range shooting, understanding your long range shooting, and working on your shotgun. The shotgun, a lot of people will set up matches more like a two-gun match, or a lot of clubs run two-gun matches because their guys don't want to shoot shotgun. And in avoiding learning how to use that shotgun, they're really selling themselves short when they go to a big match. Because if you go to a match that's shotgun heavy, you're going to get hammered. I don't care how good you are with a pistol and a rifle. If you're at a match where the round counts are equal, you're going to get hammered by the guys who can shoot a shotgun. So in terms of the shortest learning curve, learning how to load and shoot that shotgun well is going to show some big gains in overall performance because pretty much every match now has at least one, maybe two, signature all shotgun 25, 30, 35 round stages. And the time gaps on a stage like that between somebody who knows what they're doing and somebody who doesn't, especially like at a three gun nation regional where it's straight time, I mean, you can't recover from that. So,
yeah, for sure. And let's see, I think it was Rocky Mountain three gun. They had like a 50-something round shotgun stage. If I'm remembering that correctly with my my talk from Jerry, but yeah,
nice.
The shotgun stages are intense,
yep.
In three gun because the the customers demand it.
Yep. And one unique thing about the IPSC shotgun was they do not mix loads in stages. So it was either a birdshot stage or a slug stage or a buckshot stage, but it was only one type of ammo on each stage.
Interesting.
Which was fun because the slug stages, we were at a small range, they didn't have any long range at all, so it was basically like a pistol stage with all paper targets. They had swinging targets, and activators, and they were scoring, one wherever your hit was, Alpha or Charlie or whatever, counted for both hits. So it really made you know where your slugs hit. They had one stage that was 6 paper targets, and they had 2 clay pigeons hanging on a wire that you had to shoot prone under a barricade at 20 yards. So
wow.
that was a pretty legit shot. Luckily, I knew it was going to be there and worked on that quite a bit in practice, but a lot of people really went to war with those colays. And that was only an 8-round stage, so guys would go down on the ground and shoot and miss, and then they have to load laying on this barricade. Their gun's under a barricade, so they can't easily sit up and load. And it was...
They're laying on their shotgun
shells.
Yeah,
there was a lot happening in a real short period of time on that stage, so it was a really unique challenge.
Yeah, the close slug shots are cool. It does seem like most of the ones I see are guys trying to make them like rifle, like you shoot them 70 to 120 yards or something like that. But the close ones is a completely different animal, like you said. And when watching them on Three Gun Nation with those big, I think they're steel challenge targets or something like that.
In that pro match, you mean?
Yeah, it's like 18 by 21 inch,
like a door off of a house hanging out.
Yeah,
like so big, so fun to shoot.
Exactly, and you're shooting slugs, close distance. So yeah, you get the opportunity to go fast and smoke it on that.
Yeah, slugs have been kind of like long range for me. It's funny because slugs in the last 2 years have really started to gain more popularity. A lot of big matches a few years ago would only 1 or 2 slug shots, at least the ones I was going to. Slugs were not common at all. And in the last year and this year, it seems like slugs have really, really picked up in popularity, and I hated shooting slugs. I hated it. And I finally decided that I was going to learn to shoot slugs, and I put a rear sight on my shotgun. I've got an XS big dot rear sight dovetailed into my shotgun. That just made all the difference in the world. Having that specific point of reference on your rib, I'm I mean, I can shoot with this. I shoot Fiocchi low recoil slugs. I have shot some groups like 4 or 5 inch groups at 100 yards with those, and I'm not that great of a shooter. So it really transformed my slug game, kind of like it did when I decided I was going to learn to shoot long range. As popular as slugs are now, you really have to learn exactly what they're doing out to at least 100 yards to do well. At Warsport, we shot some targets. It was a pretty big target, but I want to say it was like 135 yards away.
Wow.
At Warsport, yeah. So that was a tough shot. I think I was 1 for 2, and my teammate hit both hers. So she kind of embarrassed me there.
Excellent. Well, I second the rear sight thing. Aside from, James Casanova told me to ditch the barrel clamp on there,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really jacking with my slug hits. And then once I got that rear sight on there, it completely changed it from something like I was dreading to like, all right, I got this.
Yep.
So
it really does, because if you've only got that front sight for reference, you just got no way to tell whether you've got a good sight picture or not. I've seen guys. I know Dylan had one gun where Dylan Easley filed a little groove in his rib, basically like a rear notch, a notch on the rear sight in his rib. But then you don't know that the elevation's perfect. So the excess sights we use, they come in quite a few different heights, so we can put them in there and pretty much get your elevation dead on at whatever yardage you want. And of course, windage is adjustable with the rear sight. But having that point of reference is really important to me. My brother thinks it slows him down, so that's one of our several ongoing debates in the shop.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I really like it, and I really enjoy shooting slugs now. We had quite a few slugs up at Fallen Brethren, and I shot them pretty well, so it's fun.
Well, speaking of fun slug targets, it looks like the Three Gun Nation, what's it called?
The Nationals?
Nationals, thank you. I just totally lost it. Is going to have some sweet slug poppers too.
It looks like, I just saw some photos just a little while on Facebook. I'm excited because I practiced a lot of slugs over the summer getting ready for the World Shoot, so I'm hoping the more slugs, the better it is for me.
That's way cool. So we've established that you're a practicer. That when you set your mind to it, you're going to go out there and overcome your deficiencies, and you analyze the way you've been shooting, which is fantastic. So knowing that the Nationals are coming up this weekend, what's your next few days going to look like?
Well, we're headed to Tulsa on Wednesday, which is the day after tomorrow. So I'm going to try to get to the range and practice tomorrow. If that's going to happen or not, I don't know. Since I'm also in the finale for the Pro Series, if I go out and practice, I'll be focused on that probably instead of what's going on at the Nationals. So my practice tomorrow, if I go, will probably involve me and 2 ammo cans full of pistol ammo, because we're going to be shooting the Death Star with a pistol in the Pro Series stage. So the first round. And me and pistol are a mixed relationship at best. I love working on them, but I like shooting them, but I don't always shoot them well. So that's probably what my practice session is going to look like. And hopefully I can sneak by and get to something a little more shotgun heavy.
So wake up early, grab your buddy's pistol.
Yeah, right. I've got to call my friends and tell them to I need their pistols. So, hey, so everyone always asks if we have a loaner program, and I say, yeah, I sell you a gun and then borrow it from you.
That's awesome. Oh, that's a great loaner program for you. Well, Aaron, I'm excited for you for the Nationals and the pro match, and I'll be down there too, and we'll get to meet each other in person, and I'll be cheering for you.
I appreciate it.
So, yeah, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it as well. So, a couple last questions for you before I let you go here and get on with your evening. One, what's your craziest match story?
Craziest match story? Well, we had a pretty good one this weekend at Fallen Brethren. A guy who shot with us at a couple local matches, shot his first big match this weekend, and we took our Polaris. I've got a Polaris Ranger, and then my buddy Steve has a Polaris Razor that we take and haul our stuff around. And they took off to go find a gun that another guy had left on a stage accidentally, and his shotgun fell out of his brand new M2 that I just built and fell out of the buggy. So we had quite a bit of quite a bit of gnashing of teeth over that. That didn't happen to me directly. I'm trying to think of anything. I generally tend to shy away from the crazy.
All right.
But
Probably good policy.
yeah, I'm definitely a much more of a conservative approach kind of guy. So in any match where Jacob Betzworth is at is a crazy match. So I generally defer to him on the crazy.
Awesome. Well, you're you're rounding out the team nicely. You got the crazy guy, the face guy, and I forgot what B.A. Baracus was supposed to be.
Yeah, right. Muscle.
There you go, the muscle. Well, Aaron, where do you see the sport of three gun headed?
I like where it's going. It's growing a lot. I can tell that just from with our pistol business and just the number of matches. If you look at this year compared to a few years ago, the number of matches, has doubled. It seems like, at least with major matches. I mean, there was 6 or 7 matches that basically everybody went to, and that was it. And now, if you wanted to shoot a major, you pretty much could shoot a major every weekend. So it's definitely growing. It's good because a lot of these big matches are hard to get into. So more matches means more product, essentially. If you look at it from a supply and demand standpoint, more matches means more supply, because demand is definitely up there. The prize tables at matches have definitely been, I don't know if weaker is the right word, but definitely less plentiful this year than the last couple of years. I think that's partially a product of the 2012 gun industry craze in general subsiding a little bit. And also, if you've got, a fixed amount of companies sponsoring matches and you double the number of matches, it only makes sense that it's going to dilute the prize, the share of prizes for each match. So, some guys that's really important to them. Other guys just like to shoot. I just enjoy shooting. I mean, the prize table is a nice little bonus, but I try not to get super duper wrapped up around a prize table, because some of the most fun matches I've shot had no prize table, or what you would not consider anywhere near a major prize table. So, the motivation of shooters, I think most people getting into the sport are just doing it because they like shooting, and for those people, there's so much more opportunity to shoot, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I mean, we've got the match we're running out at Copperhead Creek now, the Texas 3-Gun Championship. We had that last year in April, and came off really well. It was a great success, and this year it's going to be even bigger and better. So that's a new match. You've got the Generation 3-Gun match up in Missouri. Really, really great match. I had to miss it this year because of being in Italy, but several guys from Austin went up and shot it and just had a really great time. So there's people out there starting new matches, and really, really putting out top-level matches on the first try, which doesn't always happen. So it's a great time to be a shooter. From the industry, I mean, it's unfortunately, with the tragic shootings that we seem to have every so often, I think the gun industry in the long term is good. We're going to have the highs and lows like we've seen from 2012 to last year, and who knows what's going to happen, with the election next year. But as a sport, we, on our drives to various matches, we talk about where 3-Gun is going and whether it ever will be a viable, true professional sport, like golf or racing, or I've heard people make several analogies to the kind of sport it could be. And I think that would be great. There are guys making a living shooting, a few at the top making a living shooting, and I think there's more and more with all the more matches, more opportunity for these guys to go and win. But so much of what drives sponsorship of matches is product, getting product in front of new shooters, potential customers. If the sport transitions wholly into a professional event, that means that regular guys who just want to shoot 1 or 2 matches a year are going to be out in the cold, are going to have to go find somewhere else to shoot. If Fallen Brethren, for instance, that's a real popular one in Texas. Everybody in Texas shoots that match. Even if that's the only one you shoot all year, that's the one you shoot. If that becomes a pro-only match, 75% of the field paid their entry fee and just wants to go shoot and have a good time. Those guys are going to have to find another place to shoot. So we have to be careful in saying where we want the sport to go. The guys who do it all the time, guys who, like me and my Benelli teammates, we try to shoot a lot and do as well as we can and try to make this into a viable living. But you got to be real careful wishing for that, because if you shut out the other guys, they're the ones that pay the bills for a big match, So it's I don't know. We'll see. I would like for it to be popular enough that it could be both. I think that's a long way off, just because, like I said before, competitive shooters are such a small part of the market. I mean, you look at NASCAR, right? Everybody has a car. Everybody drives.
Right.
Everybody wants to drive everybody dreams of driving their car fast. Well, not near as many people own guns as cars, and a lot of those people never ever imagine of shooting their gun fast. They just want to go plink or take it out of their safe and show their buddies. So I think the percentage of competitive shooting as an overall piece of gun ownership is so much smaller that it's going to be hard to transition to a truly professional level. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. As it is right now, there's room at the top for the people who really put the time and money in to make a good living, especially if you combine that with, a job in the gun industry. A lot of the top shooters work for firearms companies or in some way related to the industry. And they're having a great time. They're shooting as much as they want, so that's I'm sure they would prefer to only shoot, but you got to be careful where that leads.
Well, it's a good point about being careful where it leaves. I was just thinking with your NASCAR example that the shiners that started, racing around on the beach probably would roll. They wouldn't really like the face of NASCAR today with, Tide and all that stuff. It probably wasn't what they had envisioned.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just, go pull your old Corvette out of the garage and go race like you can three. That's the beauty of three gun is, people say, oh, I need the gear, I need this and I need that. And I say, look, you have a Glock 19? Yeah. Everybody, after the last 3 years, we all know everybody has an AR-15.
Right.
I'll loan you a shotgun. Come shoot. You literally don't need to buy anything other than bring ammo to shoot. So that's something very few sports offer, when you can go and shoot a match and be squatted with some of the top guys. Like at the Armalite three-man three-gun match, we were squatted with the Armalite team, which was Rick Birdsall and Tommy Thacker and Greg Jordan. And that was the first time I'd had the opportunity to shoot with Greg. And, where can you go and play golf with Tiger Woods or drive in a car with Jeff Gordon? There's not many sports where you can go interact as a regular guy with the top guys in the sport. So I think that's one thing that shooting has that's kind of unique is the interaction between the top and bottom levels and the representatives of the various industries. Jerry's been with Smith & Wesson for so long. He is Smith & Wesson. So you can go out there and interact with him. And if you have a question about a product, he can answer it or he can pass along any information or, it's just interesting. And it's really, I think, a good dynamic with shooting sports that you can interact with so many people at the top just by showing up with your guns on a weekend.
Absolutely. It's definitely a fun environment to be in. Well, Aaron, we've covered a lot of ground. If you could leave the audience with just one thought or one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say try to team up with people who have the same goals as you. I find that when I spend time with people who are trying to reach the same goals as me, things go well. Work together, find guys that you like to shoot with and that you have common interests with when it comes to what you're trying to accomplish and spend time with them, practice with them. I've got a good group of guys here in Austin that we practice with a lot. And it's really good. So you've got guns. If your gun goes down, you've got a backup. There's so many benefits to traveling as a team is the right word, but going it alone rarely works out for the best, I've found. So find guys that like to do what you do and stick with them.
That's excellent advice and excellent life advice too. So
yeah.
Well, Aaron, this has been a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening here to chat with me.
Absolutely.
And, looking forward to seeing you next week. And like I said, we'll be cheering you on.
Good deal.
Thanks for being on the Three Gun Show.
We'll see you in Tulsa.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Aaron Hayes of Team Benelli and Hayes Custom Guns. I love Aaron's positive attitude and the way he stresses an honest self-assessment in Three Gun and improving your game. I think that